Sambadho garawa sorajo pato abokaso pabaja naidang sukarang agarang aja wasata ekanta paripunam ekanta parisudham Sankhalikita brahmachariyang charitum yang nunaham ke samasum oharetva kasayani vadhani achadetva agarasama anagariyang Abhayagiri. The household life is cramped and dusty. The homeless life is free as air. It is not easy while living the household life to live the fully perfected holy life, purified and polished like a conch shell. Suppose I were to shave off my hair and beard, don the robes of a Buddhist monastic, and go forth from the household life into homelessness.
And so that's the formal request for Anagārika ordination. And that phrase is actually straight out of the suttas. I always find it very inspiring every time I witness or I'm a part of these types of ordinations. And so you've offered these whites that you're going to put on as the Anagārika robes, and it looks like everything is complete as to what you need for now. So then I will offer this tray to you, and you can leave the hall and put those on. So having spent a bit of time in the monastery, and he served the last winter retreat, and Art has served the last winter retreat, and has been living in the monastery as a lay resident, so taking the next step of Anagārika ordination, and even though he'll still be keeping the Eight Precepts like a normal lay guest, it is much different that he will be much more in the fold of the Sangha and eating with the monks and learning about looking after senior monks, learning about the bowl washing, and so on. So it is quite a big step to take. As an Anagārika, you're much more in the fold. And these ceremonies, I just find them very powerful. And the Anagārika ordination ceremony is a bit of a shorter ceremony. You get the Samanera ordination, the Papaja. The going forth is a bit longer of a ceremony. And then, of course, the Upasampada, the higher bhikkhu ordination, is the longest ordination ceremony that we have. So I think of these as the three gates of ordination, the first gate being the Anagārika ordination. And it's generally understood to be a one-year commitment, just to see if, kind of testing the waters of monastic life, and seeing just how it goes, because it's really hard to know unless one takes that step how it's actually going to go. What is it actually like to live in the monastery? What might it be like to be a novice or a monk? So the Anagārika training really gives people the opportunity to try it out for a period of time. And the model that we use and that Longpo Cha used is the white-robed layperson. There's a number of characters in the suttas, lay people who were anagamis, who had reached the third stage of awakening, and they were known to wear white and live according to the Eight Precepts. There's these characters in the suttas, Panchakanga, Gotikara the potter, there's a few others who were known to be anagamis. And there's even a couple of instances where they actually have Dhamma discourse with the monks, and at least one that I can think of where one of these lay people actually gives a teaching to the monks. So nothing is fixed, and even Ajahn Chah was known to have his lay people give Dhamma talks from time to time. There was one elderly layman, and Luangpo Cha had him give the talk on one of the lunar observance days. And he said, teach all these young monks what it's like to be old. So he agreed, he would get up and give a Dhamma talk on old age. So nothing's fixed. Anybody who has some experience in life, some wisdom, can give a talk. Doesn't matter if you're a monk or a layperson. Doesn't matter if you're a monastic or a layperson. That wisdom can always be helpful. So Art is now putting on his whites for the first time, his new uniform, his Anagarika uniform, and he will be coming back and formally requesting the 3 refuges and the 8 precepts. The Anagarika training is also quite a commitment, because if you're a layperson, you leave the monastery, you're not necessarily bound by the 8 precepts, but when you're wearing the whites as an Anagarika, it's that commitment that even if you were to, say, leave the monastery, or there was some reason to visit home, say your parents fell ill, or there was some sort of need to visit family, you would still be wearing the whites, still keeping the 8 precepts. So it is quite a commitment. And people, before they take on Anagārika ordination, they understand that it is a very big undertaking, a big commitment, big change. Of course, the Anagārikas, they still have kind of one foot in the monastery, one foot in the world. They can still use money. There's still a bit more freedom than if you're completely in the brown robes. And the Anagārikas, they have a kind of a training robe that we call it the pavillon, and I think that's actually just French for wrap. It's the wrap. So now you can formally request the refuges and precepts.
Aham bhante ti saranena saha atta silani yacchami dutiyampi aham bhante ti saranena saha atta silani yacchami Tatiyampi aham bhante ti saranena saha atta silani yacchami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Buddham saranam gacchami.
Dhammang saranam gacchami.
Dhammam saranam gacchami.
Sanghang saranam gacchami.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Ti sarana kamanang nititang.
Amma bhante.
Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Adina dana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
Abrahmacharya veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Abrahmacharya veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity.
I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity.
Musawada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Musawada veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
Sura meraya maja pamadatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Sura meraya maja pamadatana veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times.
I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times.
Nacha gita varita visukadasana mala ganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Nacha gita vadita visukadasana mala ganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikapadam samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment.
I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment.
Ucha sayana mahasayana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Uchasayana mahasayana veramani Vedayamani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place.
Imani yata sikkhapadani samadhiyami.
Imani yata sikkhapadani samadhiyami. Imani yata sikkhapadani samadhiyami. Imani yata sikkhapadani samadhiyami.
Imani yata sikkhapadani silena sugating yanti silena boga sampada silena nibuting yanti tasama silang visota ye.
Sadhu Bhante.
Sit and puppy up. So I'll give some instruction on refuges and precepts. I like to talk about the precepts kind of first and then the refuges, actually. So these precepts are, you know them well, so they're pretty much self-explanatory, but I go through them anyway. And just to say at the outset that if you break a precept, then let me or one of the other ajahns know, and whoever you feel comfortable telling. And then generally the understanding is if you break a precept, you let somebody know, and then at the next patimokkha or the next uposatha day, you retake the precepts. And that's how that works. Actually, at the patimokkha, say this morning we did the patimokkha recitation, and then the novices and Anagarikas come in and they do their precepts. It just happens every 2 weeks, so everybody renews their precepts every 2 weeks. And with the first precept of refraining from taking life, and this is just going to come up in little ways. With you got stung by a hornet a couple days ago, so but you already knew not to take revenge on it. You knew not to kill it, so or mosquitoes landing on you, you know not to slap them. We change our habits in that way. And of course, for bigger creatures, of course, we're going to refrain from we stay very far away from killing. It says in the suttas, with rod and stick set aside, one abides compassionate for all living beings. The second precept, refraining from taking what is not given. You partially, as an Anagarika, you're partially relying on the monastery now for your meals, food, and so on. You still can use money, so you'll be supporting yourself in various ways as well. But you will be also you'll be receiving a share of whatever is offered in the monastery. In terms of taking what is not given, it's important, say, to not just take food that's not at the proper time, or taking food from the pantry. It might be at the proper time, but it's not either the breakfast or the meal time, so it's not not to help yourself. But if you always have a thought that you might like to have something, just to ask or check in if it's okay. Then the third precept, the brahmacharya. This is the celibacy, which we hold quite strictly. We're not able to engage in any type of sexual activity with ourselves or others. And so we do hold that one very strictly, take that one very seriously. And so if there's a danger of breaking that one, it's good to talk to somebody about it right away and try to remedy the situation. And that's why we do 1 year for Anagarika. You go through all the kind of ebb and flow, and the body has different cycles it goes through, and our mind also has different cycles that it goes through. Sometimes we may have experienced some sort of trauma at a certain time of the year, and we go through annual cycles. We also go through maybe monthly cycles, even daily cycles. We feel a certain way in the morning, we feel a certain way in the afternoon. So just to notice these things, and we're able to train ourselves in the celibacy in this way and try and make it work for us. The fourth precept, refraining from lying, is how it's translated these days, and I like the old translation of refraining from false and harmful speech, so we're learning how to not be harsh with people. Also, so this is the fourfold right speech that's good to be training in from the outset, not just lying, but divisive speech, so trying to keep a positive attitude towards others and not trying to divide people from each other, but rather, as it says in the suttas, delighting in concord, delighting in unity, delighting in people coming together in friendship. Then refraining from harsh speech. So if we feel upset or irritated or anger or frustration arises in the mind, trying to not allow that to come out in the speech. And or if it does, trying to rein it in fairly quickly. And then the fourth factor of right speech is sambapalapa. That's the refraining from idle chatter. That's actually defined as speech which is useless. So people might ask about this sometimes. Oh, isn't idle chatter necessary? Well, if it's useful, then it's okay. If it has a usefulness in terms of, somebody just needs some sort of attention, some sort of care, and just needs to have a conversation, then yeah, it's useful. But then sometimes speech is just, for me, it's become pretty clear when the speech that I'm uttering is useless, and I can say, oh, that's just kind of a waste of time talking like that. So that's the fourfold right speech to be paying attention to at the outset. There's also the fifth precept, refraining from intoxicants. This is specifically referring to alcohol, but we extend it to other intoxicants. Marijuana smoking is not allowed in the monastery, or ingesting or taking in any way. And of course other drugs, things like coffee, coffee, tea, these types of stimulants are allowable here. Smoking cigarettes is not allowable. That's, I believe it's not allowable in the Wat Pah Pong Sangha since 1967, when Luang Por Chah made that rule. And so that one is something to be aware of, something to be mindful of, that the Buddha said that these intoxicants are the basis of negligence. So it's not karmically bad to take intoxicants, but it causes us to become negligent and lose our mindfulness. Then the vikala bhojana, the next three precepts are specific to the 8 precepts, so the renuncia precepts. So vikala bhojana, always eating at the right time and not at the wrong time, which is the right time is between dawn and midday. Midday is defined as the sun at its zenith. However, while in the monastery, we just do when it's daylight savings time, we do 1 p.m. as the cutoff. When the time change happens, it's noon as the cutoff, and we just follow that in the monastery. And then, so this is one of the things that's very limiting in the Anagārika Ordination. That can be a new experience for people. You can't just go to the refrigerator at 3 p.m., make a sandwich like you normally could before. It's a small thing, but it can become a big thing, that kind of lack of freedom. So it's a very conscious, the vikala bhojana, that just eating between dawn and midday, is a very conscious giving up of some of your personal freedoms. But it does also free us up in other ways. It frees us up, gives us more time in the afternoon for study and for practice and for any other tasks that may need to be done in the monastery. So it does give us a lot more time for things. So it constrains us in one way and it frees us in another way. The 7th precept, we do entertainment, beautification, and adornment, and I haven't yet looked up it's actually 10 words, and we translate it as entertainment, beautification, and adornment, but it's actually kind of more specific than that. It's singing, dancing, going to shows, rubbing scented unguents on yourself. There's wearing of necklaces and bracelets, wearing of jewelry, any type of adornment in that way. And that's what the 7th precept is, all that. It's refraining from that whole world of distraction and sensuality, which is how we normally deal with suffering. But the way we want to deal with suffering is more through the practice and looking at it more directly, and not dealing with it through just distracting ourselves from it. So that's very much, that renunciate precept has a very profound significance in terms of, yeah, there are some distractions in the monastery. There's good food a lot of the time. There's books we can read, and those are all allowable things in the monastery. But we're just cutting off a large portion of distractions we would normally have in our life. Then with the 8th precept, the refraining from lying on a higher luxurious sleeping place, this is actually in the monastic rules. We're not supposed to lay on a bed that's more than 8 finger breadths off the ground. Bed legs no longer than 8 finger breadths, which is roughly 8 inches. And some people, it depends on your body type. Some people will sleep on the hard floor. Some people might use a yoga mat. Some people might use a thermarest. Most of us just sleep on the floor and don't actually use a bed at all. And this is also a really good thing to learn, in that we can actually dwell anywhere. If we don't really need a bed, we can actually dwell anywhere. And remember being at Pujam Gam and having a katina there, because there was one vasa, it was my 8th vasa, we had 6 monks there, and so we were able to have a katina, because with 5 bhikkhus or more, you can have a katina ceremony. And you would normally, in Thailand, you would invite ajahns to come and give talks. You have all-night Dhamma talks, and then the next day is the katina ceremony. And so there was one monk was giving a very long Dhamma talk, so then the other monk, who was going to be the second speaker, who's over 30 vasas at the time, he just laid his robe out on some really uneven rocks and fell asleep. And I was really impressed by that these monks from the northeast of Thailand, they can just sleep anywhere. It doesn't really matter. There's these uneven kind of black rocks at Pujam Gam. He just laid his robe out and laid down. He was quite comfortable. And then when just before it was time for his talk, he got up and put his robe on and got onto the Dhamma seat. So, and he was very happy. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind as well. And also Ajahn Amaro translates that one is not overindulging in sleep, which is also a valid translation or a valid meaning of that precept. In terms of the refuges, just some brief instruction or guidance on the refuges, and that what the refuges are is that it's a recollection that our mind is always taking refuge in something, and we're always looking to get away from suffering somehow. So whether it's taking refuge in a distraction, or taking refuge in food, or taking refuge in sensuality, but we're actually trying to change to take refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha in order to alleviate ourselves, ultimately to end suffering. And Buddha Dhamma Sangha, there's the external Buddha Dhamma Sangha, the Buddha who was the historical Buddha who gave all of these great teachings that are helping us to alleviate our suffering, the Dhamma, the teachings and the suttas, and also that the ajahns, Lopor Cha and the Krupa ajahns have given to us, passed down to us. The Sangha, which is the monastic, we can think of that as the society of practitioners, both lay and monastic. Then the internal meaning of Buddha would be the knowing. In Thai we say the puru, so the knowing quality of unbiased knowing that's inherent in terms of being able to experience things in an unbiased and completely pure way. So that would be Buddha. And then Dhamma would be the truth of the way things are. And so the Buddha knows the Dhamma in terms of the knowing, sees and knows the truth of the way things are. And then internal Sangha is virtue, which is a refuge. So these are internal refuges, and we can take refuge in that knowing awareness, we can take refuge in the truth of the way things are, and we can take refuge in virtue, in that internal quality of Sangha. So that's a way to think about the refuges, and that those are a place of safety, a place of security for us to abide in and to recollect. And so having spoken on the precepts, and the refuges, the next part of the ceremony is the formal taking of dependence. And so you could get back up on your haunches and perform that part of the ceremony.
Acharyo me bante hohi, aya samato nisaya vachami. Acharyo me bante hohi, aya samato nisaya vachami. Acharyo me bante hohi, aya samato nisaya vachami.
O paikam.
Sadhu bante.
Pati rupang.
Sadhu bante.
Pasadikena sampadehi.
Sadhu bante. Ajata gedani tero mayham bharo aham pitera sabharo. Ajata gedani tero mayham bharo aham pitera sabharo. Ajata gedani tero mayham bharo aham pitera sabharo.
Very good. Yeah. Okay, you can sit comfortably again, and I'll talk a little bit about taking up dependence. So that's a formal taking of dependence ceremony. So it's taking dependence on myself as the teacher, but also it's the understanding here is you're also taking dependence on Ajahn Sek, Ajahn Krudadamo, Ajahn Chunda, the other teachers here in the monastery, and ultimately taking dependence on the community. People will be giving instructions, and the first week or two you'll be learning a lot about eating in the hall with the monks and washing the bowls and so on. And it'll be a lot, but you'll be fine. It's a good learning process. The Acharyo me bante hohi ayasamato nisaya wachami, it just means may the Venerable One please be my teacher, may you accept me as my teacher. And then the last part where I said o paikang pati rupang and so on, that's where I'm saying it is good, it is proper, it is well. And then the last chant you did is a very beautiful meaning. It means roughly, the elder is now my burden and I am the burden of the elder. So we're willingly taking on this. We've accepted you as a student of the monastery, and so we're accepting you as a burden in terms of teaching, training, getting you up to speed with living in the monastery and being a monastic, and then also you'll be helping out in various ways. So you're actually taking on some of our burden as well. So there's a mutual respect, mutual helping out there that takes place in the monastery. And so, it's a very good thing to do. You're in Anagarika now, so sadhu, and welcome to the homeless life, and or partly welcome to having one foot in the homeless life. And if you're always welcome to approach myself or any of the other ajahns for things that you need. And it's a very good opportunity as well in this short life that we have. I was just thinking a little bit during the meditation when I visited my family back in Eastern Canada. This is my sister's husband is Canadian, and it's actually St. John, New Brunswick, and they have that's where all those people in during the Revolutionary War who didn't want to leave England went. The Loyalists, they went up to St. John, and so there's a Loyalist cemetery there, and with my brother-in-law and looking at some of these grave sites, and they kind of did gravestones a little bit differently back then than we do now, where each person would be, okay, so and so lived to the age of 32 years old, 6 months and 4 days. Say the months and days. So each person had the number of days that they were alive. And I think that's important recollection, is that we have a finite number of days that we will be alive, a finite number of breaths, and we don't know how long we have in this world, and we just have a very short period of time. So taking this opportunity is very important, and taking that first step, that first gate, the first gate of ordination, of Anagārika Ordination, I see it as a very strong acknowledgement of that not waiting any longer, just actually wanting to dive headfirst into the practice in the fullest way possible. And it comes from that acknowledgement that for all of us, we don't know how long we have, and even if we have the longest time possible for a human life, it's still not that long of a period of time. So to do what's meaningful, to do what's purposeful in the moment is very important. So wish you well, wish you all the best. That concludes your Anagarika ordination ceremony.